Happyslapped by a Jellyfish. The words of Karl Pilkington. Brussels. Suzanne won this trip in a raffle. It was the first direct train from Manchester to Brussels with Eurostar. I say direct, but it wasn't. It was a train to London Waterloo, where we had to wait for 30 minutes and then change onto a Eurostar train. Hardly direct. I wasn't in a good mood, because we had to get up really early to get the first train from Manchester Piccadilly. I used to be brilliant at getting up early when I was younger. I used to start my paper round at 4:30 a.m. so that I'd be back home for 6 a.m. to watch the Pink Panther on TV AM. And I never found it tough getting up. My boss lived above the shop, and I used to have to wake him up because I'd be there before he was awake. I told him I had to get the job done early because the Pink Panther was on at 6. He'd say, "Can't you watch it before you do your paper round?" But I didn't like the idea of that. I wanted to watch it knowing that my day's work was done. I could enjoy it more. I used to love that job. I used to nick a few chocolate bars, magazines, magic markers, drawing books and calculators from the shop. One day, I was slipping a Mars bar up my sleeve and a fella saw me. He wandered over. I thought I was done for. He said, "Oi, I saw that, but you're lucky. I won't grass you up, because I've just nicked this lot." He opened his jacket to reveal a few magazines and a bottle of Coke that he'd nabbed. "Be more careful," he said, and off he went. I got away with it that time, but on another occasion, I got in from playing out and my mum said, "I've just had a call from Ian's mum, and she said she wants me to go round for a chat." Why do you think she wants to see me? What have you been up to? Ian was my mate, who I used to flog some of the nicked stuff with. I thought I'd best own up. I told my mum that I'd been selling calculators and chocolate that I'd robbed. She told me off and went round that night to have a word with Ian's mum. Turned out it was nothing about robbing. She just wanted to borrow 20 quid, because she was short of cash. Shame Ian didn't flog her one of the calculators, so she could sort her budget out. I hadn't needed to own up after all. Anyway, we were up early getting the first train to London Waterloo. We didn't have time for any proper breakfast, so I ate 6 Cadbury's chocolate rolls instead. They gave me a headache. There were other people on the train who'd won the trip to Brussels. A bloke came over and said that there was a meal laid out for all the winners at a restaurant in central Brussels that night, and that we should collect a voucher for it from the tourist desk once we arrive at the station. I didn't like the sound of that. I'm not a fan of talking to people for long periods of time when I know I'm never going to see them again. I prefer to be left alone in a quiet corner somewhere. But it's getting more difficult to find places where you can hide in a dark corner. All these new restaurants now have long tables where everyone is crammed in next to each other, like that scene from Oliver Twist. It's daft because they cram you in close to each other, but then bring all the food you order on loads of different little plates and little boxes, so you have to stack your meal. I've eaten off my knee in the past because there's been no room on the table. I was in one of them Wagamama noodle places, and I was so crammed in that someone ate a bit of my chicken on a stick because they thought it belonged to them. We didn't meet up with the other raffle winners. We went for a McDonald's instead. I was queuing up thinking about what I was going to have when I noticed an old woman sat in the corner. I'd say she was about 79 years old. She looked in a bad way. If she'd been a dog, you'd have her put down. She had a short skirt on with no knickers. You could see it all. I don't know why she hadn't been kicked out, unless it was because she worked there and was paid to keep the flies out of the kitchen. An old person's body is never good to look at. It's sights that a woman in McDonald's that will confirm to me that we're living too long. The body isn't meant to last 80 years. You can look after the contents of the body all you want, but the body itself is like those carrier bags you get in the supermarkets. They ask you to reuse them, but they ain't made to last. I've seen a few naked old people. I was on a busy train from London to Manchester when Virgin had just brought out those new flash tilting trains with the bigger toilets. I went to the loo and hit the button that opens the electric sliding door, and there was an old woman with her knickers around her ankles. "I'm not finished," she shouted. "I didn't know you were in here because the door wasn't locked." As she was yelling at me, I hit the button to close the door. But then she gets up and hits the button again because she didn't realise I'd hit it. The door starts opening again. "Leave me alone, or I'll tell the guard," she shouts. "I tried to close it," I said. She then falls as the train tilts and grabs the nearest thing, which just so happens to be the orange emergency cord that sets off the alarm. There she is with the door open again, like the beginning of Stars in Their Eyes, a siren going off whilst falling back with everything on show. I legged it and tried to find another toilet. There are never enough toilets on our trains. Mind you, it's not as bad as in China. I've heard their trains get so packed that some of the passengers have started wearing nappies. I couldn't do that. When I was in hospital with kidney stones, I was attached to a drip. The nurse gave me one of those things to wee in because she said it would be easier than having to drag the drip on a stand into the loo with me. But I couldn't do it. My body knows that I shouldn't be having a wee lying down, so it doesn't let it happen. It's this thing like that confirmed to me that I'm not in charge of my body. We left the McDonald's and went for a wander about. I think it was a rough part of the town, as there was quite a lot of homeless people knocking about. I suppose the old woman with no knickers was another sign that it wasn't the best area. I wasn't used to seeing so many homeless people back then, because Manchester didn't really have that many. I remember a blind fella who used to sit on Market Street playing panpipes, and some homeless identical twins. Even though they were homeless, the twins still managed to do the things that twins do, like keeping the same hairstyle and wearing the same jacket and pants. They used to stand at each other at each end of the approach to Piccadilly Station, which I don't think was a good idea, because people would have thought it was the same fella and only given them one lot of spare change. My dad gets sick of me mum giving their pension money away to the homeless. We were out shopping with her recently, and she went up to a man who she thought was selling the big issue and gave him £1. Turned out it was just a fellow waiting for his wife outside, going places with some holiday brochures in his hand. He still kept the quid though. I think Brussels has the brainiest homeless people, as they ask for change in 3 different languages, which I thought was pretty impressive. I only know English and a few words of French. I'm just about able to ask for some chicken, poulet, or cheese, fromage. If I was homeless in France, I'd get sick of eating the same thing every day. We wandered about the streets of Brussels for a few hours. The only thing I knew about the place was that the action film actor Jean-Claude Van Damme was from there. I knew that because of his nickname, the Muscles from Brussels. It's one of those cities that's nice enough, but you could do with never seeing it. If you've no business being there, there's no reason to bother going, as it's like plenty of other places for the same reason. I've never been to Birmingham. It's probably just like Manchester. Thinking about it, Van Damme could have lived there, and he could still have the catchy nickname Jean-Claude Van Damme from Birmingham. It's weird how names can make a person. Most really famous people have odd names. Samuel L. Jackson, Clint Eastwood, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Joe Pasquale, Einstein, and Stephen Hawking. I think their names help them. A name gives you respect. Nobody ever shortens Stephen Hawking's name to Steve. Anyway, we wandered about for a few hours. The guidebook said Brussels has the most restaurants in the world, but seeing as we'd already eaten burgers from McDonald's, There was no interest to us. It's only a good fact if you're hungry. All that way for a burger. It's not worth going anywhere for one night.